Hello everybody, my name is Dr. Meena Shivan and I'm a senior lecturer within the Faculty of Business and Economics within the Department of Marketing and Management at Macquarie University. And today we are privileged to have with us Mr. Ron Innis. Ron has 30 years of experience assisting large organizations with developing international business strategies and international marketing strategies. And today he's going to share his insights with us on leading and managing in culturally diverse environments. Let us begin with introducing Ron to our show. Welcome, Ron.
Thank you, Meena.
Ron has a Bachelor of Commerce degree with the honors in applied psychology and economics from the University of New South Wales. Ron has also done a master's degree in commerce with the honors, which is an honors research degree in marketing, again from UNSW. Ron has international and domestic business experience in senior management and marketing roles with large organizations such as Xerox, Qantas, American Express, and several major direct selling companies. He has held international area management roles as well in materials management and facilities management with large non-profit organizations in the Asia Pacific area. As you can see, he has a very broad area of experience locally as well as internationally, lectured and coordinated across several business subjects in large universities across Australia. So we are indeed privileged, and it's a pleasure to have you, Ron. Welcome.
It's nice to be here.
Let us start off by looking at your experience. We know that you're a globetrotter, and let us start off by you telling us which countries have you worked for and worked in, and which ones do you think are the most interesting? And it would be great to hear some of your challenges that you faced while working in these varied countries.
I started by traveling extensively when I worked at Qantas. In fact, I'd never been overseas before, other than to New Zealand.
Okay.
And I still recall my first trip to the United Kingdom and Singapore.
Right.
And on Qantas, and learnt to do things differently then.
Right.
And then I spent a lot of time in Asia, but of great interest, of course, is working in Japan and Asia. Also, what has been fascinating recently is to visit the Middle East and to get to understand a little bit more about that culture.
Right.
And then into the Pacific Islands and the jungles of Papua New Guinea.
Wow.
Trying to do some things there, and through the beautiful islands of Samoa, Tonga and Tahiti. It's just been a great experience with huge differences.
Okay. Well, it would be great if you could tell us about your experience in the Middle East. I hear that the people in the Middle East are very high context, and I have also heard from one of my colleagues that there is a large amount of nepotism working in the Middle East because they feel that they're a part of a kind of a group which are affiliated to one another. They were basically nomads for several years living in the deserts, and now they feel that they cannot forget about their family members, and therefore they say when they're conducting international business, their family members come first. Did you experience something like this in the Middle East?
It's really interesting to see in the Middle East the parallels between the Middle East and Japan. Like in the Middle East, as you say, they were Bedouin people.
Yes.
And in response to the colonialist powers, they put them together as nation states.
Right.
Previously, they wandered around without borders. And their loyalty to their clans and their family members. In Papua New Guinea, they call that one talk. We call it nepotism in the Western culture.
Yep.
And you look at that as older traditions, but in Japan, you look at the samurai class, you know, forming the basis of business and past allegiances. So it's sort of a natural reflection. In both those societies, in Well, even in Papua New Guinea, Japan and Middle East, there's great honour
Right.
attached to relationships.
Okay. Would you be able to tell us about challenges of communication and negotiations? Japan versus Middle East, or Asia versus the Western countries?
In the communication area, in Japan, of course, everything is high context, as in the Middle East. And so, while we as Westerners might think that someone is not telling the truth,
Right.
in reality, they're giving you an answer that either says, yes, I understand the question,
Okay.
or yes, this is the right answer for the particular situation to
Right.
save face or to preserve pride. And so they don't necessarily lie, but it's yes, but in a context, which has been fascinating. For example, in Japan, I had an assignment with American Express to do some training and a functional business audit of American Express's travel service divisions.
Right.
And I attended a meeting and I did some training with the staff, and everyone seemed to be nodding acceptance and everything
Yeah.
was all right. And my friend who'd been living in Japan for a long time said, Ron, at the end of the meeting, he said, Ron, don't think people are going to do this now. I said, what do you
Right.
mean? They all agreed. He said that in the structure of the high tolerance of power, they wait for someone to instruct them to do that. While they're being happy and they agreed, someone over them have to tell them to do it. And so it's very formal.
Okay.
That was an interesting difference.
Yes. And from this, I suppose the lesson to be learned for the managers of the 21st century is that they have to remember to respect the face when they are operating in Asian countries.
That's
That
really
is
true.
definitely interesting insights, Ron. Let's move on to the next question. And let's look at what are the challenges that you faced as an expatriate when you were working and traveling in varied cultures and countries. I'm sure your experiences would be very interesting with how to give your visiting cards, how to greet them, what are the etiquettes with regards to having dinner with them. We would love to hear those.
Right. Well, that has been a fascinating experience for
Right.
me. And the importance, of course, when you're meeting with people is to have a high tolerance of conversation. In many, many cultures, in the Middle East, in Southern Europe, in Asia, people want to get acquainted first to sort of build the trust and relationship.
Yeah.
And so with the card giving, of course, in the Middle East, one is respectful and to receive the card and look at it and then place it in a container or carefully to the side. And that's particularly in Japan and Asia, that's a tradition there.
Right.
Other things that affect you a lot is to understand that while you may not understand the language, people can tell whether they like you.
Okay.
So I think we need to be a little more humble as Westerners,
Right.
or if anyone from any other society, to be open to learn and be humble, and maybe as a courtesy know a word or two of greeting or expression of thanks,
Right.
or to politely say no. Those sort of things I think people can sense.
Right. Okay. So, well, another lesson for the managers of the 21st century to learn here is that respect highly when you're working in these cultures.
Absolutely, and to do homework before you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is to read Austrade or read your ambassador's, your country's foreign affairs profile of a country, to get some understanding before you go, so that you won't be surprised and you don't give offence unwittingly to people.
Ron, do you think people should know the language when they go overseas to another country? Is it important? Is language important?
Language has been important for long-term expatriates when they stay. But I think we're seeing the trend now where a lot of companies are opting towards short-term, longer visitations than the expense of expatriates. That, together with the need to give honour to that country by employing locals.
Right.
And so rather than a 3-day visit, probably a 3-week or 4-week visit, I have found more effective rather than living in for 2 years. Another company has, that I have recently read about, send their country managers, local country managers, to their head office for a year.
Right.
And that gives an opportunity to send someone from the head office for a year, sometimes without their family. So the emphasis is on educating local people more.
Right.
Now, technology helps us a lot with WebEx conferences, video conferences. But you know, once you make the decision to go internationally, whether you like it or not, you have to visit.
That's right. Talking about the changing trends with expatriate management, another important lesson for managers of the 21st century is that technology has definitely been a game changer. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, do you have any other insights on how technology is changing international business today?
The technology has had great impact, and because of the ability to, that the internal networks of organizations to create virtual teams rather than have people meet together.
Right.
Sharing of portals for research and development, like I'm sure are being used by Tata, an Indian company, and other companies sharing with their research and develop sections throughout the world.
Right.
Also this video conferencing, and in the middle of a conference you can exchange documents via a WebEx device or something similar. And it also enables you to effect more reasonable control.
Oh, right.
I think the challenge is we don't give people in foreign companies a lot of room to move. We watch them too carefully.
All right, okay. Well, one of my questions, taking that further, would be, whilst leading and managing multicultural teams in foreign countries, specifically say in regards to France, I really don't know if you've had any experience with France, but I've heard that it is much more difficult to manage teams in France than in other countries like Germany or the UK. So could you give our managers some insights or tips on how to work successfully with cross-cultural teams?
The challenge is, of course, the underlying culture.
Right.
And I'm not really well briefed on the French culture, but European cultures are different within ourselves.
Right.
And the mistake we make is to think that all Asians are the same. Koreans behave the same as Japanese, as the same as the diaspora of Chinese, diaspora of Indians from different parts of India are different, as you would know.
Yes, absolutely.
Mina, and in Europe we get that difference. The French, it's interesting, I understand in the French language, when you're consulting in a business language, is a little different from the colloquial language.
Absolutely.
And you have that with different dialects makes virtual teams a bit of a challenge. However, I think in the trends that we see, there's a convergence of values, there's a convergence of business planning and monitoring tools that help virtual teams be more successful.
I absolutely agree with you that there is definitely a convergence happening with globalization. But as I have seen, although there is a convergence, the cultural differences still exist in every country. And that is the reason why most multinational corporations these days have to adopt a globalization strategy. They do have to go global, but they still have to adapt their services, their products, their ways of doing business as per the choice, the likes, dislikes, the taste of the culture of that particular country.
Well, this is particularly is evident with different cultures have a different view of time. It could be in the Middle East that things may happen or may not happen, and inshallah, God willing.
Yes.
Or in Australia, you have an expression, she'll be right, mate.
Yes.
And so some cultures aren't so performance-oriented as others.
Yes, that's correct.
And I think this comes in sometimes for our reporting information systems as well. Sometimes we foolishly, in a head office, require weekly or monthly reports when we know that no one can possibly action the content of that report in that time frame.
Right.
better off to get a report every 6 months
Right.
or an annual report if you can't do anything about the content.
Yeah.
And people see through false timelines.
Right. This is such a good example to show how culture has a huge impact on business and business
Yes.
operations, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Okay, Ron, we'll close our interview with the last question that I would like to ask, and that is, what are the challenges that companies face with these kind of convergences that you mentioned that are taking place because of globalization in society in these days?
I think one of the biggest challenges is relevance.
Right.
You know, the things that we do from our home culture needs to have some relevance to the location we're at.
Right.
And while we expand internationally for very good reasons, strategic reasons, to take our firm's specific advantages
Yep.
and take them to somewhere where there are some location advantages, such
Yes.
as cheaper labour or special skills or raw materials. Whatever we do needs to seem to be relevant, and in a very courteous way, we need to persuade and educate people towards the standards that we're looking for.
That's right.
And also to make sure that our information flow is two-way.
Okay, very
That is to make
interesting.
sure that we brief the Home Office
Yep.
that they can become truly local, as you said.
Okay, all right. So the game has to be played by both the host as well as the home countries to reach
Absolutely.
a success. Right? Thank you so much, Ron, for your insights. They were very precious for our students as well as for the managers of the 21st century.
Thank you,
Thank
Meena,
you.
for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.